This is Basingwork Abbey at the Greenfield Valley Museum. Today, it stands in ruins, but hundreds of years ago, it would have been a home to monks of the Cistercian order, also known as the White Monks. Through the power of magic and advanced multi-million-pound special effects, let's travel back in time to see what the life of an average monk would be like back then. It seems we don't have a multi-million-pound budget. So let's do this the old-fashioned way. The power of imagination. Back in 1147, when this order of monks was first established, this would have been an impressive structure. But what of the monks who lived here? What was their life like? Well, look, there's one of them now. Let's ask him. You. Yes, you. What's your name? I see you've taken a vow of silence. Well, we'll just have to guess then. Is it Paul? John? Matthew? James? Bert? Kanye? Well, how about we just call you Pod for now? So, a vow of silence was optional. However, there were some very important rules that the monks had to live by back then. In at number 3, it's the vow of poverty. That's right, you weren't allowed money of any kind if you wanted to live as a monk. At number 2 this week we have the vow of chastity. No relationships of any kind were allowed with women. And finally, still at number 1, we have the vow of obedience. Monks were expected to dress and behave in the same way, so no adding your personal style to your get-up. So, what was the average day in the life of a monk like? Well, it was very hard. Pod is expected to rise at 3:15 in the morning. Every morning. At 3:30, prayers would begin, followed by a time for personal meditation and study. 3 hours later, at 6:30 a.m., it was time for breakfast. Imagine how hungry Pod would have been. Then it was time for more prayers. And finally, work would start at around 9:15. The monks wanted to be self-sufficient, which meant all their food had to come from the grounds of the abbey. Pod could have found himself tending the gardens. He could have been doing the washing up. Or perhaps looking after the livestock that would have lived here. At around 12:30, Pod would have had a well-deserved lunch. But his day was far from over. Back to work, Pod. Perhaps Pod might have had to visit an infirmarium, a monk who would have provided medical care for the others. Or perhaps part of his job might have been to copy out the manuscripts of classical authors. But prayer was always the main focus of the day, and at the sounding of the prayer bell, any work was immediately ceased, and the monks were required to stop what they were doing and attend the service. Particularly a ceremony called the Opus Dei, or Work of God, consisting of prayers, hymns, psalms and readings. But the abbey wasn't closed to outsiders. Part of Pod's job would have been to talk to visitors, perhaps ones who were thinking of joining the order themselves.
Yep.
Supper would have been at 6. Then, more prayers. And then, at around 8, Pod would have finally gone to his straw bed, ready to do it all again tomorrow. Good night, Pod.